What is a belief you had to unlearn to become who you are today?
I'm worthy because I
And if
felt unworthy
you
before.
felt unworthy,
Yeah.
wow. May I ask why?
The way I grew up, my family dynamics weren't always the healthiest. So I felt like I had to prove myself.
Mm,
I, you are familiar with the fact that, I was in band and music. And so competition, I'm always trying to prove, I'm trying to get to the best just so I can get, and I will be somewhat transparent, my father's acknowledgement, which I never quite got it. So I had good grades. I tried to do whatever it was. So that feeling of unworthiness. So I had to unlearn that to recognize that, yeah, you're worthy to do this. You're worthy to be appreciated and acknowledged. So yes, that's what I had to unlearn.
Welcome to Going Beyond the Image, a podcast about how leaders live their brand. I'm your host and founder of Gobi Marketing Group, Loanne Lake. In each episode, I sit down with leaders and executives who are walking their talk and who understand that branding is behavior, culture, and service, among other things inside of their organizations and outside in the community. These are conversations about what it takes to build trust, inspire teams, and create meaningful impact in today's world. Today, we will be speaking with a leader who embodies the Gobi pillar grounded identity. What makes your brand authentic? So, whether you're leading a company, a nonprofit, or a movement, this show will help you reconnect with your why and why you're doing the work that you do, how it connects to who you are, and how to show up with intention in every space you occupy. Today, I'm joined by trailblazing entrepreneur Kady Jacobs. She's a woman with vision who pours into the lives of those who need a calming presence during their most challenging moments. Kady is a native of St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, who relocated to South Carolina to pursue her passion for empowering others. She holds an associate's degree in science from Tri-County Technical College and two Bachelor of Arts degrees in elementary education and psychology from Clemson University. Notice I said two. She is dedicated and committed. Kady also has dual Masters of Arts degrees in management and leadership and human resource management. And throughout her career, which has spanned over 20 years, Kady has taught special education with the Anderson and Greenville school districts in South Carolina. She facilitates parenting groups and has developed transformative programs across the Greenville and Upstate area in South Carolina. In other words, she is more than qualified for the role she fills today. She is a servant leader in the Upstate community who has dedicated her life to serving those facing life challenges. And in 2021, she founded the award-winning counseling practice Anger Management of the Upstate at the Resolution and Enrichment Center in Malden, South Carolina. There she serves as a certified parenting and transformation life coach and an ACEs trainer, and we'll have her explain what that is in just a few minutes. And she facilitates court-recognized classes in anger management and domestic violence. Although her firm is based in South Carolina, Kady can meet with clients across the country. And so there's an opportunity to benefit from her services no matter where you are listening to this podcast. On a personal note, she is one of my lifelong friends of more than 40 years, whom I've had the pleasure of watching evolve into the resilient woman sitting before me today. And I can personally attest to her authenticity. That is a huge part of the brand that she will be talking about with me. So I'd love for you to give a warm Gobi welcome to Kady Jacobs. Kady, how are you?
Thank you for having me. I am doing well, doing well. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, since I've mentioned in your bio ACEs training, can you explain quickly what that is before we get into a little bit more about your background?
Yes, so ACEs actually stands for Adverse childhood experiences. And I think it's one of the foundational things that creates a greater understanding as to why people are the way they are. So it is actually an assessment that asks several questions. Have you ever had this type of experience, that type of experience? And it comes up with a score range. And people normally who take the assessment find out there are a lot of things that they've experienced historically that impacts some of the decision making and their thought processing.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining that to us. I know some of us have probably heard the term over the last few years, but may not have really understood what it could stand for. So, Katie, you, like myself, grew up in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, and you made your way to the Carolinas. How did that journey, leaving a island culture with people who knew you, where, most people might have known someone in your family, and planting yourself in the upstate region, how did that help to shape who you are and the kind of leader you've become?
It definitely was a transitional experience for me. Leaving one, your comfort zone, you grew up in a culture you felt comfortable with, that's the life you knew, to embark on something that you is the unknown. So it helped me to grow and mature because I was my birthday is kind of late in the year. Technically, I was still 17 when I started college. I hadn't quite made 18. So having that level of I not only have to adjust and be comfortable in an unknown situation, but to have the determination that I can grow and then eventually thrive. I didn't have family support here. I did have one blood relative in the area. So it was definitely a learning curve, but I think for me, that was fundamental on how to be able to build my confidence on moving forward in whatever it is that I'm going to try. Although education was my main focus, I did have to also adjust to um, living on my own because I end up having to get an apartment and all that kind of stuff. So it was definitely a major change.
Now, did you know growing up that you would do the type of work you've done for most of your career, or was it something that gradually happened over time?
I think it's a combination of both. I always knew that I always wanted to help and serve people. I've always had that, I think, innately part of who I am. But I didn't know exactly how that would play out. And I think what I did initially was kind of mimic the foundation that I was exposed to because my mother was an educator. So I felt like maybe that's a good path. So I initially started there. But as I continued forward in not only education, but as far as my career journey, I kind of evolved into where I am today. It had an evolutionary process for me,
Right.
personally.
Okay. And with all that I've just read about what you've accomplished in your career, was there ever a time that you felt you were not walking in your purpose?
No, I've always felt like I was walking in my purpose because especially when I was at Clemson. Even though I was going into education, I decided I wanted to do the psychology part because I wanted to understand people. And during that experience, I had the honor and the privilege to work with Dr. Crosby was my professor at the time, and they had an experimental program where we were actually going to do more than the typical student teaching experience. And it really tied into my psychology with my minor in sociology degree because what we did was we went to back then it was considered at-risk community. So we went to one of those schools, but I actually had to drive a distance. We were two different towns. So I drove to another town. But part of that experience beyond the student teaching was we actually had to do what we call drive along with the local law enforcement in the evenings
Hmm.
in the neighborhoods in which the kids lived that were attending that school. And then we had this paper and project that we had to do to explain how those environments impact the children's ability to learn and how we now can reach and connect with those children to educate them. So I think that was, I think, the greatest experience that I had lead
Hmm.
moving forward.
And that actually ties back into those ACEs you talked about, right?
Right.
Okay. And at what point did it hit you that anger management of the upstate is what I'm supposed to build? And then we can talk about what you do in that capacity.
Okay. So I was actually working at a local nonprofit, and people were calling in for the services to meet their court ordered requirements. And there was a gentleman that called in, and actually we turned him away. And ironically, later on, that same gentleman called back, and I happened to answer the phone. And he was really emotionally expressing his displeasure with the fact that he should not be held in contempt of court for something he can't find. And that really struck me to the point that I decided, you know what? I'm going to reach out to the local solicitor's office and I'm going to find out what is the criteria to become a qualified provider for these services. So
Mhm.
that's what I did. I created
Oh,
the
wow.
meeting and asked the question, and they gave me the criteria. I had 90% of what they needed. I had more than enough education experience, but I was not certified in that particular area, which was anger management at the time. I was already certified in the parenting.
Mhm.
So lo and behold, I was able to start in 2019 actually offering parenting classes from the courthouse because I was already certified while I was working on my certification in anger management. I decided to do the national certification because I did not want state lines to be a barrier, because people could be localized in a place, but then the incident may have been across the state line.
Right.
Even though it was a little bit more expensive, I decided to take that path. And of course, COVID came, which shut down everything. And that's what really drove me to say, I need to find my own brick and mortar. I cannot be reliant on some other entity
Mhm.
to, facilitate these types of classes. So that's where it really started. It was, I saw the need, and it's something just, it really struck me to my heart, and I just moved on it. So I literally started organically.
Well, that's a beautiful story, and actually, that is at the heart of business. I just watched something yesterday, before filming this, that said you're supposed to the successful businesses fill the needs that people are looking for, not the ones that create a business and then try to convince people that it's necessary. And I think that you listened, you heard what people were crying out for, and then you brought it to fruition. So I think that's an amazing thing. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your company does and how your practice helps people?
Yes, absolutely. So initially, I started off with the parenting, like I mentioned, and the anger management series. So I actually offer, I no longer do the parenting, but I offer for the anger management a 12-week series, which could be either in person or virtual, a 20-week series, and a 26-week series. Both the 20 and the 26 is virtual. So those can be for personal reasons or to meet court ordered requirements. But then I also offer a domestic violence series. The court has established that it has to be 26 weeks.
Okay.
So there's no variation there, and that's done virtually.
Okay. And would you say that based on your personality, your values, and your character, that this is work that feels aligned with who you've been called to serve?
Absolutely, because I'm one of those people, I don't like to see people in pain. I'm sure all of us have experienced pain at some point. And if I can do anything to help someone along the way so they can have the best quality of life, that is truly at my heart's core mission. So that's why I'm so passionate about the work I do. Even though I offer the classes, I have also realized everybody doesn't like classes. Everybody doesn't want to sit in a group. So I have individual sessions. And so we can still get to meet people where they are.
Mhm.
And I think that's what has been one of my driving forces is truly it aligns with who I am. And one of the beautiful things I think is a gift that God has given me is to be able to relate to people at all levels. I tell people relate to you if you're in the basement or the boardroom. It does not matter to me. So I really feel like even though people call it work, it's kind of my ministry because I
Mhm.
feel like that's what I am supposed to be doing is helping people along that path of whatever life dishes them.
I love that. And just that you said from the basement to the boardroom, that should be on a t-shirt because it really embodies the entire scope. Now, anger management for a long time has carried a really heavy stigma. You know, people assume that you've lost your mind or you don't have good self control if you're court ordered to take it. You know, some of us have more patience than others. So, how did you decide to lean into that name for your company, anger management of the Upstate, rather than call it something else or brand it in a less obvious way? What does that say about the brand you've built in South Carolina?
Well, to be perfectly honest, the name came because make it simple. Call it what it is so people can find it. Because, like I
Hmm.
initially said, I created this to meet the need. So if I named it something else, how are they gonna know how to find it? So I
Right.
simply call it what the society calls the name. I just gave it that. It's not where I would have liked to call it. If you left it up to me, my brand would probably, which I think is part of my co-brand, is emotional elevation, is really
Mm,
getting people's emotions elevated to the point that you're living your best life. But I named it because if somebody's searching, get on internet
those are
trying to
the
look
terms
for it.
they're looking for.
Exactly.
Right.
I started organically, so it isn't like, I had all these, you know, budgets for marketing. So if somebody looking for it, you type in anger management, guess what's gonna float to the top?
Your
So it's
company.
that simple, right?
But that's basically branding 101, or search engine optimization. Those are the things that they tell you, like what are people searching for. It just so happened that you chose that for your business name, but it's also probably the most searchable term for the work that you're doing. Even if it wasn't intended, it was a really brilliant strategy. And with this podcast, we talk about going beyond the image, or in this case, the visuals of your brand or the name of your brand. So when you hear the phrase grounded identity, what does that mean to you personally?
For me, it is not just the words that are attached to whatever it is that your product or your service. The grounded identity to me is the life source behind whatever it is that you're doing. For me
Hmm.
as a service, I believe in quality. That is my grounded brand. So, in other words, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, I want to give you the best service possible. And for me, that's where my identity is. It's part of my reputation. As to when you come to me, I'm not gonna look at you as less than, and I don't care if you making, 7 digits. It doesn't matter. Everybody gets treated the same way. And so for me, that is my grounded. I have to be that grounded that everybody is treated with the level of respect and humanity across the board.
Well, I appreciate your honesty there. And, one of the things that I wanted to point out is you are not a psychologist. You do this work as a trained social worker and a coach, right? Which is a distinguishing factor in branding. But I feel that it also allows you to serve a broad sector of people without having cost be a barrier. Um, you're in a space where people probably don't think much about branding, especially when it comes to mental wellness. It's more driven by services and price and insurance and those things. But you're someone who's been charged with helping people to heal. So it would seem that your reputation is really important to your work. What are some of the misconceptions about your line of work that you've had to address to get your clients to understand why you're the best person to serve them?
Well, one of the biggest misconceptions, like you said, when people think of anger management, the assumption is more or less on the side of aggression. I wish I can call one group aggression management because truly anger management covers the entire spectrum. A person who is non-responsive, they don't know how to share and express their emotions to the one who is overly expressive. And because of that, I feel like the work itself, even though they have the labels, is when I'm serving people is getting beyond the labels, getting them to understanding that, hey, although it's anger management, when you come to my groups, I say this up front, it's going to be emotional management. We're not even, yeah, we're going to highlight some anger things because I feel like anger is like a secondary, sometimes it's a third layer of what you're really dealing with.
Hmm.
So when it comes from that perspective, that stigma that comes with the label is, I hate to almost feel this way, but sometimes it feels like a superpower because they come in with the notion that, oh, this is what it's going to be. And, they come in with that guarded
And
thing
you
and then
disarm
come in.
them.
Yeah. And it's like, wait a minute. Everybody need to be taking this. I don't know how many times I've heard that verbiage.
Really?
Yes, they would say everybody needs to have this. This shouldn't be just for mental health issues. So
Mm.
what I like to think of it is kind of like many people think when you think mental health, come in with a problem, come fix something. And I like to tell people, I'm not here to fix people. People are not broken to be fixed. Um, But I think of it more like, why do you go to your doctor for your annual checkups? You
Right.
go to just make sure everything is good. And if there's something you can enhance, let's enhance that. And coming from that approach has
Right.
helped kind of once you get on the inside. People still have the stigma like, why you want to work with those people? You sure you don't need to have a bodyguard and all that
Right.
kind of,
But
feelings behind it.
it sounds like, which is why I think you may need to reconsider the emotional elevation, but it sounds like you're talking about emotional maintenance
Yes.
as opposed to fixing a trauma. And that's a good way to reframe a conversation that could shape the way your industry operates in the future. So I would love to hear more about that as you progress in your work there. How would you say your upbringing in the US Virgin Islands has influenced your approach to this work? And then I'll follow that up with, how do your values show up in the way you run your practice?
Well, I really think my upbringing in the islands has shaped my work because it has helped me to be expansive in my thinking. Being from a melting pot of cultures has helped me to not just have a linear view of people.
Hmm.
And so that has helped me walking into this space. So I think culture has also helped with having a more open mindset of people from different places. Um, so I think with that being my foundation, I guess I feel like that was a bonus.
Well, that's excellent. And what would be the word that your clients use to describe you after they've encountered several sessions with you?
I think one of the common words, I guess because I push it, is understanding. Not only do I want to be understanding of you, but I want to help you to learn to be understanding of others. Other people, another word that I hear commonly is like um, warmth. I like that word
Hmm.
because when I think warm, I think cozy, I feel comfortable, those kinds of things pop in my head. So I appreciate when people say that about me and or you're more than a teacher. Even though I don't call myself a teacher in those
Hmm.
spaces, it feels like, oh, so they're gaining knowledge or something. So they feel that
Right.
instruction type thing. So all of those things are, I guess, good words that I hear from other people that I was not really intending when I serve others.
Well, knowing you for as long as I have, I would say I agree with them. You are the embodiment of a hug. And that's probably what they're trying to say. And that's the whole point of with this podcast. It's to show people, and I encourage folks to take notes, is to show that if you're leading an organization, the leadership should reflect the service that people are coming to receive. You should feel some level of consistency if you're presenting as a practice that is going to heal people and help them elevate the way they think and feel. And then you've got this standoffish, cold CEO who walks past the people as they're rushing out the door. That's a bit incongruous. So, you want those things to align. And I don't think that people really put enough attention to that when they're building a brand and building a business. It's way more than just showing up on social media and becoming an influencer. And unfortunately, branding has been relegated to more of the marketing side. but there's so many um, intangible things that really shape how companies show up and how people remember them. So, what has been the hardest part of building a brand in the mental wellness space um, for you?
The hardest part is one, being relatively new in the space,
Okay.
and then also coming in. I like to say myself as a unicorn because I'm not exactly fitting in. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a sociologist. I'm not all those ists that people
Right.
label. Um, I'm truly that person that is a hybrid of an educator and a counselor.
Mm,
So just the fact that I have this kind of a specialty made it hard because people don't know whether to classify when you filling out certain documents. Are you education or are you mental health? And them both. That has been difficult. That has been a challenge. And then it also was challenging because now I have to prove myself. Why
mm,
should I grant you opportunity or space? Um, to do the work that you do. Um,
mhm,
Even when you're having establishing contracts. I have a contract with the local, technical college, as
mhm,
a transformational coach. And so really selling them on that. I literally went in for a semester to prove myself and then of course had to it was only for a semester trial, and of course you have the bidding and all of that, but it felt like extra work. But what I really embraced through that process, even though it was a challenge, which I think is part of my brand, is the personal touch. Yeah, you could talk about all the nice graphics and all that kind of stuff, but that personal touch for me is one of the best things that you can do for your brand. One thing is for people to know what you do, but to feel what you do
mm.
and to know that, hey, I feel like I matter. Whether
Yes.
I don't care if what you are doing, if that person really feels that, that personal touch, to me, that's the winning ticket for me, at least.
Oh, she can almost wrap up the interview with that because to feel what you do, that is a really vivid way to paint that picture. And one of the follow-up questions I had for you was based on that. You recently won some national awards for your practice. So clearly, the work you're doing is resonating with people in the community. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, how that is helping to expose your brand in your community and increase your visibility?
Yeah, I think the recognition, and I know I'm getting used to that, is it lets people know it's credible. It's not just hearsay. It puts some
Mhm.
credibility on it, especially when I look at the other names in the pool who have been much more well established, been there longer, had much more longevity than I have. It speaks to the quality of the service that I strive to provide every single day. And it's the small things that I think push the needle toward that, and then people recognize it, and that is so reassuring. For example, how many other places that do you go to for a service, and after the service is done, you paid your money, it's a done deal. I don't hear from you ever again.
Right.
The simple, even if you're using technology to remind you, "Hey, happy birthday," or "The session is over," rather than saying, "Gotta go, gotta go. I'm gonna stay over extra 15 minutes. We're online here. Anybody have anything?" And we call it our little after party. "Who wants to stay for the after party for 15 minutes? You're
Mhm.
welcome." Those small things make the difference that other people, I guess, felt it necessary to make it notable. And I think that's what sets what I do apart. And the recognition just adds the credibility.
I love that, and I love that for you. And you talk about the personal touch. There was a book that I read many, many years ago by a public relations practitioner, Terry Williams. Her book was called The Personal Touch, and I must have read this book in the the 90s, but it
Okay.
never left me. I still have the copy today because one of the things that made her stand out in her profession at the time was making the effort to send personal note cards and sending a clip of an article that, with a nice little note to someone, or making a phone call when you to celebrate somebody's accomplishment, or some type of non-email related thing that lets someone know they matter, that you're thinking about them. Especially when you're in a cluttered field, you have to do, but you're doing it genuinely, not because you're trying to get an edge over people. But those are the things that people remember. And as you said, it's how you make them feel. So we're coming to the tail end of our conversation together. One of the next things I wanted to find out from you is, in learning more about your company, you stated that your facilitation style is one that captures hearts, challenges thinking, and provides practical tools. How how embedded is that into the brand of anger management of the Upstate?
It never leaves. It is the bloodline for it. I believe in if I don't connect to your heart, how can I reach you? Many people hear words, many people, are exposed to things, but if I don't touch your heart, there's no true connection. That's what love is. It is truly a heart connection thing. So I feel I have to be able to touch your heart, but then I also want to give you things that you find useful for you, that you have the buy-in to say, this is going to work for me. I'm going to try it because you realize I do want the best for you, and then give it in a way that it's easily applicable to the person I'm talking to. It's a challenge when you work and you think of bringing a group together. I have people who have no education all the way to PhD. And imagine teaching all of these or facilitating a workshop or a class with all of those levels without losing anybody. So I
Right.
use the framework of saying, I'm going to treat it like people treat um, fitness. I'm going to start with low impact, moderate impact, and high impact. So I offer the impacts and incorporate it in my facilitation. I also would maybe use a word and then I would define the word while I'm
Hmm.
talking. So it's really truly, yes, I need to meet the heart because I will use things that you can relate to. It's real life, real time, whether I use news that's happening and incorporate it into the lessons, or sharing sometimes of some of my personal experiences, and that's really where you touch the heart, and then you can really help, like I said, their buy-in to wanting to hear what you have to say and receive it well. It just makes it more palatable.
So based on that, then, what does it mean for you, Katie, to live your brand in a area where trust is everything? What does that look like for you?
It really is, for me, it's intentional. I wake up every day with that intention, that's what I'm gonna do. So for some people that might say, "Oh, that will be your default." But no, it's truly, I want to do it and I am going to do it. So it's truly, I can't think of any other word but intentional. And it is also part of my purpose because my purpose is I want to see people have the best. We only get one trip around the sun, so to speak.
Hmm.
So why not make it the best? And even if I could throw a nugget or element or something little in there to help you to get there, then to me, that's it. So for me, it's everything.
That's amazing. And how do you ensure, and it may be similar to what you just said, how do you ensure that who you are behind the scenes is the same person who your clients see, who the community sees, who the public sees?
That is just who I am. I mean,
Mm,
if it would be one thing if I felt like I have to be performative in this process, but I really feel that's, like I said, I feel like that's what God has placed in my heart to be able to love people. I mean, I don't,
hmm.
not everybody can do that.
Yes,
Um, so I think because it is who I am, it's not hard. It's just,
it just is.
yeah,
And that is one of the key elements of building a brand that lasts. If you have to convince people that this is what you are, then it really isn't innate. It's something you've crafted and curated, and then you've got to rehearse and perform it. And what we're talking about, friends, is building something that feels so natural to you that your work is an extension of who you, the leader, are. And then that trickles down to everyone that either works for or encounters your organization. So thank you for making that clear. Um, when people encounter your work, what do you hope they will experience or feel?
What I'm hoping that they will experience is a positive shift. It doesn't have to be a major shift. And I want them to walk away with, I have a greater awareness and I have greater understanding. So I'm empowered to make better choices. That's just foundational for me.
Hmm.
So when you walk away, you feel, if I have to surmise it, you feel better than you came. I just feel better.
Okay, they feel better. And at the heart of this podcast is, as we say, it's how you're living your brand. And it sounds to me like you have done a really good job of blending your work, or not even blending, of making sure who Katie is in her personal life, is who Katie is in the business life, as a community leader, and at all times. And I do think that is the biggest takeaway from this segment today when we talk about grounded identity. It's what makes your brand authentic. So if you're creating a business, if you already have a business, I would encourage you to really pay attention to what people are saying about you, what you think your brand is conveying, and then really look at who you are as the CEO of that organization and see where the gaps are. That's how you're going to really get to the root of what your identity is. Um, Before we go, I do this with every guest, and it's a quick segment called Beyond the Image. So there's no wrong answers. We just want real ones. And so I have four quick questions for you. What is the one value or belief that keeps you grounded no matter what role or title you hold?
Integrity,
Integrity. And what is the one word that you would use to describe your leadership style?
servant,
Servant. I love that. What is a belief you had to unlearn to become who you are today?
I'm worthy
Mm.
because I
And if
felt unworthy
you
before.
felt unworthy,
Yeah.
wow. May I ask why?
The way I grew up, my family dynamics weren't always the healthiest. So I felt like I had to prove myself.
Mm.
I, you are familiar with the fact that, I was in band and music. And so competition, I'm always trying to prove, I'm trying to get to the best just so I can get, and I will be somewhat transparent, my father's acknowledgement, which I never quite got it. So I had good grades. I tried to do whatever it was. So that feeling of unworthiness. So I had to unlearn that to recognize that, yeah, you're worthy to do this. You're worthy to be, appreciated and acknowledged. So yes, I had to unlearn.
Well, you are most deserving and you are most worthy, my friend. And if there is one thing that you could change about your brand today, what would it be? If there's one.
Wish I wish I could make my brand accessible to everyone. I wish I can clone it in all different aspects so it doesn't feel like you have to reach for it. It's
Mhm.
just there. You can access it. So I'm hoping that's just my dream. My vision might be too big, but accessible to everybody.
Well, I don't think any vision is too big. We just have to make way for it to manifest in some capacity. So before we go, would you tell our listeners how they can follow you and engage with you online?
Yes. So the best way to follow would be, of course, my main page is my anger management of the Upstate. Um, but I also would encourage people to follow me on YouTube. Um, I do have a few videos and shorts, but my main resource for people, if you just want information on how to deal with your emotional wellness, follow me on Emotional Elevation with Kady Jacobs. I have a website. If you just look it up on the internet, it pops right up to the top. But I'm also on Instagram under anger management of underscore upstate. And of course on Facebook at anger management of the upstate. So
Okay.
Basically the business name other than the emotional elevation.
And we'll have that information in the post-production for this conversation. So thank you so much for sharing your time. And friends, remember, building a memorable and authentic brand is not just about being seen. As you've heard us talk about today, it's about living what you believe, whether you're in the office, in the boardroom, or in the community. If this episode spoke to you, please leave us a comment so we can hear your feedback. And be sure to share it with someone who might need one of these nuggets that were given to us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And thank you for tuning in. Until next time, this is Going Beyond the Image.